Okay, I'd like to call the meeting of the Urbana City Council to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Barnes?
Here.
Mr. Bowersox?
Here.
Mr. Garrick?
Here.
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Mr. Smythe? Ms. Stevenson?
Present.
Mayor Presson.
Here. First item is approval of minutes of previous meeting, October 20th.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Stevenson, seconded by Barnes. Any additions or corrections? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay, we move to petitions and communications. If anyone wants to address the city council, you need to fill out a little card. And the person who has filled one out is John Snyder. Would you please state your address and keep your remarks to 5 minutes?
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Snyder. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for Carl Foundation Hospital. I'm here tonight to comment on the Crystal Lake Neighborhood Plan. Unfortunately, I have another commitment this evening, so I'm going to have to leave after I get done. But if it's appropriate, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have after my comments. Paul Wiese, who we've worked with closely in reviewing the plan, one of our consultants from JJR, as well as Gretchen Robbins, will be here if when you do talk about the plan. We strongly believe that Carl Foundation Hospital's community resources should be used to improve health care, not to improve the status of housing in Urbana. That said, we also understand our corporate role in the community and want to be good neighbors. For years, we have worked with the neighborhood and the city to improve the Crystal Lake area. We acknowledge that replacement housing is an important vision for the mayor as well as the city council, and we have already committed to assisting in achieving that. When we provided input into this document, we agreed with the city staff's language encouraging Carl Foundation Hospital to participate in replacement of housing. In agreeing to that, we fully anticipated that our level of support would be determined in response to any future request for the expansion of the MIC, and that's fine with us. All we are asking for is some flexibility. Carl Foundation Hospital is not willing to commit to the high expectation of required one-to-one housing replacement. We do not believe such a requirement would be fair or equitable. After all, there isn't a guiding document that we're aware of that says all Urbana organizations and businesses will be held to that requirement in the future. Should the school district, churches, and the park district and businesses interested in developing in Urbana or in our neighborhood anticipate such a requirement? That's obviously up to you to decide, but our expectation of you would be to be reasonable, fair, and equitable regarding your decision as far as the implementation of strategy H1 in the plan. Let me end by thanking you and applauding all of you, the staff, neighbors, and everyone else involved in creating the Crystal Lake Neighborhood Plan. We think it's a good plan overall, and it's the end of my comments. I'll be glad to answer any questions if that's appropriate.
Well, I would like to respond to your statement. I mean, you did come to the City Council on July 23rd, 2007, and you presented your street vacation request. And in that document on page 3, you said that you had listened and learned through the neighborhood meetings, and this is in red. You say replacement housing is major concern. We intend to be part of solution. Then on page 47, again in red, you have our commitment, and the fourth item is to work with the city to address the need for affordable housing in Urbana if Carl gains approval to expand the MIC. So I don't know why somebody put the word encourage instead of require into this Crystal Lake plan, but I think we should stick with the language that you committed. And we are certainly committed to you to be fair to you. And we're not insisting that you do anything that's unreasonable, but we want to work with you, and we'd like you to live up to the commitment that you made to us a year ago, over a year ago.
And I think, again, it's in the wording, absolutely. We realize if we're going to come and ask you to expand the MIC, that we're going to have to work with you on affordable housing solutions. That's different. That's encouraging us to work with you versus commit today to one-for-one housing replacement. I think those are two very different things. We absolutely know we need to work with you to come up with a solution. That's working with you to come up with a solution is very different than committing to one-for-one housing replacement.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Smythe.
Yeah, just to continue this thought, John. Okay, but the thing is, we're trying to develop, we're trying to come up with an agreement here. You're going to be coming forward with a proposed change in an expansion of the MIC. What is the commitment that Carl is willing to make? What are they willing to do to make this? It's one thing to talk nebulously about, encouraging and so on and so forth. It's another to have a concrete plan in place. And what is your actual commitment? The mayor's language here is proposing an actual commitment. You're talking in very nebulous terms. What is Carl's real commitment?
Again, I don't know what the requirement is going to be. I don't know what the flexible type of solutions that we maybe could come up with together. I assume that when we would come forward and ask for an expansion of the MIC, we would work through that. What I'm asking today is don't lock us into one-for-one replacement, because that doesn't seem fair and equitable to what you're doing with everyone else. Absolutely, I know we need to do something, and the test will be you won't approve an expansion of MIC unless you think it's fair and equitable.
Yeah, well, the issue becomes one of removing a viable section of affordable housing that is, because of your care of it, in pretty good shape. Mm-hmm. And so relocating those homes becomes important as part of the community, and you're expanding into a neighborhood area. My follow-up question is, okay, well, let's suppose that we just move the MIC in a different direction. Why can't you expand along University Avenue? I've asked this question before, and there's plenty of space along University Avenue. You just did an expansion on University Avenue. It looks great. You worked and you put it behind the gas station there. You've got space on the north side of University across from the Cancer Center and moving eastward. Why not continue in that direction?
Right. And again, I'm not here today to ask for an expansion of the MIC. All I'm at, you're considering a plan that's going to commit us to one-for-one replacement. And all I'm asking is please give us some flexibility, leave the encouraging word in there, and if in fact when we come and ask for expansion of the MIC, we would work with you to to come up with a solution that we both would agree to. Again, we know we can't expand the MIC until, we work out a solution that you approve. I just think today's premature to put into a plan that you're going to approve to say it's required one-for-one housing. That ties all our hands up for future options and alternatives.
Yeah, I don't want to debate it with you to a great extent, but it just strikes me that the word encouraging is not strong enough here.
Heather.
I just, kind of on the flip side of the coin, Carl does some really great things in this community, and they have a community care program, and that does stuff for people who can't afford health care, and I want to applaud the good things that Carl is doing, and also say that I believe that John and his staff and Carl employees are committed to the city of Urbana and to the people and the citizens of Urbana, and we need to give carrots, not sticks.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address the City Council? Okay, let's move on to, I don't believe we have any old business. Reports of standing committees. David Gehrig.
Greetings from the Committee of the Whole. They send their best regards and hope you're all doing well. We sent along 4 ordinances to the council with a recommendation for approval. These are agenda items F1A through D. I'd like to go through them one at a time. First was ordinance number 2008-10-123, an ordinance approving a third amendment to a redevelopment agreement with Alan Strong, 395 North Ray Street.
So moved.
I second.
I can move it myself? Okay, glad to hear it. Okay. For the committee, I so move.
Second.
Okay.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Garrick?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts? Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
That motion carries. Mr. Gehrig.
Next is ordinance number 2008-10126, an ordinance amending Schedule H of Section 2393 of the Urbana Local Traffic Code requiring stop signs at a certain intersection, Cypress Point at Stone Creek Boulevard, Stillwater Landing at Stone Creek Boulevard, Pebblebrook Lane at Stone Creek Boulevard, Stonebrook Court at Stone Creek Boulevard, and Prairie Winds Drive at Colorado Avenue. On behalf of the committee, I move.
Second.
Once again, Mr. Gehrig moves and seconded by Heather Stevenson. Any discussion? If not, would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Garrick?
Yes?
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe? Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
That motion carries. Mr. Gehrig.
Next is ordinance number 2008-10-127, an ordinance vacating a public alley blocked between California Avenue, Urbana Avenue, Illinois Street, and Maple Street. On behalf of the committee, I move approval.
I second.
Okay, that was made by Mr. Gehrig, and I believe Mr. Roberts got to the punch first. Any discussion? If not, would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Garrick?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe? Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
That motion carries. Mr. Gehrig.
And finally, we have ordinance number 2008-10-128, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, fire truck purchase 2008. On behalf of the committee, I move approval.
I second that.
Okay, motion by Gehrig, seconded by Roberts. Would any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Garrick?
Yes?
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe? Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mayor Pressing?
Yes. That motion carries. I don't think we have any reports of special committees, reports of officers. Tom Carino, Economic Development.
Good evening. Just one announcement to be followed by the monthly ED report. On November 5th, this Wednesday, there is a meeting related to the University Avenue corridor, as well as the Springfield corridor. Both corridors are going to be addressed in this meeting. Again, November 5th, it will be at the Illinois Terminal, as this is a joint project between the City of Champaign, the University, and the City of Urbana. It will be 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Illinois Terminal on November 5th. Also, this afternoon, emailed the monthly ED report. I do have a few hard copies here if anyone needs one, but just to highlight a few issues. The market at the square, we've come to that part of the season where we are coming up on our last weekend of the market at the square. Last weekend will be this Saturday, November 8th. Just this month, we had 4 special events at the market at the square, so lots of activity. We had the 2nd annual bike rodeo. We had a mask making workshop, which was a cooperative effort between the public arts coordinator and the market at the square director. We also had the final installment of Sprouts at the Market, which is an event for children to learn about healthy foods and locally produced foods. And then we also had Market at the Scare this past Saturday. All successful events, and attendance has been higher this year than any year previous, so very excited about that. Staff is continuing to work on analysis on the extension of the Build Urbana program, and you will have before you next week, next Monday, our analysis on the Build Urbana program. And then finally, staff is continuing to work with the Urbana Development Group to put together an agreement related to a loan guarantee program. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Charlie?
Yeah, I have a couple. Okay, Lincoln Square, where are we on conference space? There was talk of hotel conference space maybe developing in Lincoln Square. Has that gone anywhere? Or am I just dreaming it?
The ownership of the historic Lincoln Hotel is still moving forward with plans to renovate that space. They're having architectural work done for the interior renovations, and I don't think there's been any discussions recently related to convention space at Lincoln Square.
Okay. So, and just to continue on the theme, so what kind of schedule do we have for the hotel? Anything yet?
I check in with them periodically. They are interested in moving forward with the project in that they're interested in doing improvements to help increase occupancy at the hotel. Occupancy is not where they want it to be. They do need to do improvements to help bring that up. They are doing interior architectural work to renovate the interior of the hotel. They do have an architect working with them on that. They have explained to us that they have a tentative agreement with a national hotel chain that will want to see some significant improvement done to the hotel before they'll commit. They do have an agreement, a tentative agreement with a regional restaurant chain to open a restaurant in the hotel. Again, those are both predicated on the fact that they need to do significant improvement to the interior of the property.
I guess one of the things that I see missing from the downtown area is an Italian restaurant where you can get a quality pizza as well as Italian food. A couple more questions here, if I can find them on my page here. I know that there are several other high-tech companies that are in the downtown area, engineering firms and such. I noticed you're working with Cobalt Digital. Is the potential to move them into downtown? I can think of one really good building where I'm familiar with the infrastructure for technology, and that's the Timponi building on South Broadway, or North Broadway, I guess.
The Timponi building is currently occupied. It's probably not its highest and best use, but it is occupied right now.
Mm-hmm. But is the interest in trying to move Cobalt Digital to the downtown area?
We presented to them a couple of downtown sites, and they're reviewing those sites right now. No decisions have been made. We did follow up with them following our retention meeting, and I expect we'll be in touch with them shortly to see if any of the sites we presented will work for them.
Okay, and then my last question is related to Meyer and the Lydia Court residents. We made any progress on dealing with that issue? The noise there? So, since you mentioned it on here. Thank you, Tom.
Are you, well, we made had Myers make a lot of changes where it wasn't screened at Lydia Court. They placed a fence, they added additional landscaping, they did some work with the grading to close the gap. We met with the neighbors in Myers back in September, and this was what Myers agreed to do. They also agreed to institute a number of operational changes, and we're monitoring that and hope to meet again to check again on the number of loading trips and the time. I think a lot of the impacts the neighbors were experiencing was because there was no screening of the loading area, and it was very busy when they were stocking the store and also during construction. Then it was busy while they adjusted the stock following the opening. But they did commit to the city and to the neighbors that they would limit their loading trips to 3 a day, with only 1 in the evening between 10 and 12. And we want to make sure that that's the limit is complied with. We've had 3 different lights that have had to be mitigated for nuisance lighting. 2 are complete, and we're working on a 3rd. And we're just trying to stay in touch with the store director. They've been very responsive. It's not the best situation in terms of distance and grade changes and things of that nature, but we've certainly worked hard with the neighbors and with Myers to try to mitigate that situation. And we think, too, with the reduction in loading trips and with maturing of that heavy landscaping screen, that with time, this will become less of an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Charlie, I'd like to add that I've asked the people who complained about the noise to document the date and time so we can see what the pattern is. But I think the company has been very responsive every time an issue's been raised. But I think there's a basic problem here that the elevation of the store is higher than what people expected. So the berm is not really effective right next to the homes. The berm on Amber Lane is quite high. So there's a problem there, and we'll try to figure it out if we can do it just by scheduling deliveries or if there's something else that needs to be done.
Bigger berm.
Okay, I would like to, did you have another question?
No, one on
Brandon?
another report officer question.
Okay, I'd like to give a report. I am responding to the Carl initiative. I'd like to say that Carl made an excellent effort to get public feedback concerning their expansion, and the city of Urbana has made every effort to accommodate the needs of Carl while balancing the need to preserve the neighborhood and keep affordable housing for Carl employees. And because of the city's commitment to sustainability, replacement homes should be energy efficient. And I've already held up the report that was given to the Urbana City Council on July 23, 2007, where Carl committed to replacement housing. I don't think the word encourage should have been put into this proposal, and I have a revised wording. But just to quote from what they committed, on page 3 of their report, printed in red on their original, replacement housing is major concern. We intend to be part of solution. Then on page 47, you have our commitment to work with the city to address the need for affordable housing in Urbana if Carl gains approval to expand the MIC. And that's all we're asking for, is that they work with us. We're not saying that they have to pay the entire cost of doing anything. We know we have to negotiate with them on how to do this. But if we don't have one-to-one replacement of housing, the neighborhood is going to disappear. So I believe that we should not only include strategy H1 in the Crystal Lake Neighborhood Plan, but rewrite it to reflect the public commitment Carl made to the city. And I would recommend the following wording. Require one-to-one replacement housing if residences are removed due to Carl expansion. The replacement housing shall be energy efficient and accomplished via negotiated agreement with Carl and with local housing providers in consultation with the people of the neighborhood. I think the argument that we're not asking schools to do this or whatever, I think anytime somebody has an expansion, if it's going to be destroying houses, that's going to be in conflict with our commitment to sustainability, that people can live close to their place of work. And I don't think we have anything against Carl. I think we want them to live up to their commitment to work with us on this, and that's all it is. Anybody have any questions of me? No questions. Okay. Anyone else have a report of officers? Brandon.
Yeah, I had a quick question of Assistant Chief of Police Connolly, which sort of came from neighbors, and I wanted him to just quickly give us the lowdown. I'd heard a number of requests from neighbors about the helicopters this weekend. They were flying overhead all weekend. People had asked her, is this the Urbana Police? What are all these helicopters doing? So very quickly, we wanted to just hear the story from the police.
The Urbana Police did not own any helicopters.
Thank you. Yeah.
Flying this weekend. I did contact Chief, Chief Jeff Christian.
Oh, thanks.
He did say that this weekend there was a rather large security detail that was being worked on Friday night as a result of a threat that I'm sure most of you are aware of, if not all of you.
They've been using a helicopter, an Illinois Department of Transportation helicopter, since 1999 for traffic control patterns in various football games. On big games, the helicopter's been here since '99, so it was up both Friday night and Saturday, one for a security detail, one for the football game.
Thank you. Perfect.
Okay.
And on top of that, the previous week, there was an extra helicopter doing the parachuting, as I understand it, too, which added to the additional noise.
Okay. Let's move on to new business. Robert Myers is here, our planning director.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Good evening, everyone. This is a request by Delbert and Sarah Dahl, owners of 2003 Airport Road. They're requesting authorization for an emergency sewer connection to the sanitary district, and under certain circumstances that are provided for by mutual agreement, the City Council can direct city staff to allow hookup to the sanitary district on an urgent basis under certain circumstances. In this case, the property owner's their septic tank has failed, and so their sanitary service is failing. And they have a sewer next to the property that they can hook into. They've also filed an annexation petition. If any of you would like a copy of this, you're welcome to have a copy. And with this annexation petition, since they're contiguous to the city on three sides, we don't have to go through an annexation agreement process. We'll be going straight to the annexation petition. But even before that, they need to be able to have sanitary service.
Charlie?
Move approval of Resolution 9394-R13, establishing procedures for approval of annexation agreements for the purpose of sanitary sewer connection.
Second.
Yeah.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Barnes. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Next is ordinance number 2008-11-129, an ordinance amending the City of Urbana Comprehensive Plan 2005 for the Crystal Lake Neighborhood Plan Amendment.
And Mayor, before this discussion starts, I'll be recusing myself.
Okay.
What we have here is a request to amend the Urbana Comprehensive Plan by adding the Crystal Lake Neighborhood Plan as an element of that plan. This is basically how we add neighborhood plans to how we adopt them, is adding them to the comprehensive plan. It's what we did with the downtown strategic plan and the King Park neighborhood plan, other various neighborhood plans. A little bit of discussion on how we got here. On September 8th, we released the final draft of the plan for a 30-day public review period. We made the plan available at several locations: the city building, library, park district offices. We put an ad in the newspaper, and we sent a few hundred postcards out to all the residents of the Crystal Lake neighborhood to let them know that their comments were desired, if they had any. And we wanted them to take a look at the plan and let us know what they thought. During that period, there was a meeting at the Community Development Commission where they reviewed the plan, and they had a couple suggestions, which I'll talk about in a quick minute here. And then after that 30-day period, there was a public hearing at the Plan Commission on October 9th, and the public hearing was closed then at the next Plan Commission on October 23rd, when they forwarded the plan to City Council for approval. Quick look at the planning area here. Generally, it's from the train tracks south of the Carl campus and on the south all the way up to Country Club Road. The west boundary is Lincoln Avenue. The eastern boundary is a block east of Broadway. The need for the plan came about when some residents from the neighborhood group, UCAN, United Citizens and Neighbors, came to speak with city staff and the mayor about their concerns with Carl's potential expansion. So at that time, we decided it would be best if we just did a whole neighborhood plan for that area and just did it in-house, so we could kind of bring together all the various planning efforts going on in that area, like provide a planning context between Carl's campus plan and the Park District's plans and other various plans going on. So that began in March of last year. And here's a quick overview of the planning process. I'll just give you a couple highlights here. The visioning phase, this is where we really collected most of our inputs. It began with a visioning workshop last June of last year. We had 50 residents came out, told us what they liked about the neighborhood, what they wanted to see changed, gave us wrote down some of their visions for the neighborhood. So that was the raw data we collected with. We started off with these open-ended questions and trying to funnel down to more specific objectives as the process went on. After the visioning workshop, we came up with a resident survey to get down to some more specific things about what the neighbors would like to see. We sent that out to residents. We also sent it out to business owners. And in the visioning phase, we also talked with the major stakeholders of the area, including the UCAN neighborhood group, the Park District, and Carl Foundation Hospital. The next phase was plan preparation, where we whittled down our input into more concrete goals and objectives and came out with some implementation strategies. During the final plan preparation phase, we presented those goals and objectives and implementation strategies to the residents again at an open house, which was just held in August. And we had about 25 residents came out, and we got some really good feedback from them. And that feedback was incorporated into the final draft, which you see before you right now. And the last phase is implementation, which will happen after council adopts the plan. The plan will affect planning decisions in the area. It'll affect the CIP, capital improvement plan. It'll affect some of the grants plans. They've got a consolidated plan coming up that we're going to start working on soon, and their annual action plans. And also this plan will affect any potential updates to the development agreement between the city and Carl Hospital. Just to look at the sections of the plan, there are 6 major sections plus a big appendix with lots of raw data. Background is just all kinds of background data, demographics, trends. The planning process I just described. Trends and issues, this is where we look at the data and see what people said in the visioning section and just overall look at the trends, see what's happening in the neighborhood and how is it going to affect the neighborhood. Things like, we know Carl's growing, how are they going to grow? We know the housing stock is aging, how is that going to affect the character of the neighborhood? All kinds of things like that. The next section was the plan concepts map. This is something we put together, I guess during the plan concepts phase when we were formulating the goals and objectives. We kind of stuck some of those in here, and we've been revising it constantly over the last several months. The background for this map is the background colors are actually the future land use colors, which are found in the comprehensive plan. And then there are several notations. Some of those are from the comp plan. Others are from other agency plans. such as the Park District's plan for Crystal Lake Park. We've got a couple notes like improve Crystal Lake Pool. Also, other notations are things that we heard from the residents that they wanted, like connecting Crystal Lake Park to Leo Park and connecting those to downtown. And some other things are improvements that people would like to see, such as making sure the sidewalk network is complete and installing a bike path up around the park. So that is Plan Concepts map. The next section is goals and objectives. There are 19 goals and several objectives. I won't go through them all, just give a brief overview. The first group is land use and development. These goals basically look at how we want to see development occur in the area. How do we minimize incompatibilities between various land uses? In terms of redevelopment, what's going on? We'd like to see university redeveloped. New development needs to be compatible with the overall design of the neighborhoods. Of course, promote sustainability and integrate planning efforts across the various plans that are overlapping in this over the planning area. Housing, main goals are preserving the established character of the neighborhoods and providing a one-to-one replacement of housing that is removed from the neighborhood to establish the character. Mobility. These goals basically look at traffic congestion and increasing mobility choices to get people to make it so they don't have to necessarily drive to get through the neighborhood, so they could walk or ride a bike. So maintaining the multimodal transportation system, improving infrastructure, and also enhancing connections throughout the neighborhood to downtown and to campus. The last group of goals and objectives look at community enhancement. There are a lot of great assets in the neighborhood. These goals basically just look at capitalizing on those assets and trying to get more involvement from the residents to bring out the best in the neighborhood. The last section of the plan is implementation strategies. Those are attached to your memo. Basically, it's taking a look at all the different goals and objectives and seeing what specifically can we do to attain those goals. So for each strategy, we've identified what's the strategy, what's the time frame, is it a long-term, short-term, is it ongoing, who's going to be responsible, and for responsibility, we identify someone from the city or someone from an external group, or for several of them, we've identified people from both the city and from outside. So those are all the implementation strategies. I don't want to go through them all right now. Just a little bit about the review process. We had that 30-day review. Community Development Commission gave us some great comments. I'll just cover a couple highlights. The first one, they noted the importance of having residences face out onto the park, and that is something that Objective 5.2 calls for, so we feel that's in there. Their other main concern was implementation strategy H3, which reads, promote investment in rental properties such as the apartments at Lincoln and Fairview. And the Community Development Commission felt that this was kind of promoting the conversion of housing from single-family to multifamily rentals. So they wanted to reword it. Their suggested language is encourage investment in existing rental properties. So that's one of the changes staff is recommending. The public comments, it was available for a 30-day public review period. During that time, we received one written comment, which, given the amount of effort we put into notification, I think says a lot about how well we had public input during the process leading up to that. So that comment's attached. But also, we after the public review period, we spoke with the North Broadway Neighbors Group for some additional input. They had a few comments on sidewalks and multi-use paths, which they generally support. But one thing they really wanted to talk about was Objective 13.4, and that calls for street lighting to be installed along the east side of Broadway Avenue. There's existing street lighting along the west side, and those neighbors feel that that existing lighting is adequate, and they generally don't want to see additional lighting which might shine into their windows or otherwise create a unpleasant environment for the night sky. So staff subsequently recommends that Objective 13.4 be removed from the plan. Then there was the public hearing itself. Plan Commission had a discussion of several items. A couple of the highlights again. Strategy M12, which called for the creation of a bicycle path along Lincoln Avenue. We went back and reviewed the Urbana Bicycle Master Plan, and it calls for something different. So the strategy M12 as it is, it's conflicting with the Bicycle Master Plan, and it would not be feasible because of traffic levels. So staff recommends replacing strategy M12 with the following: create a safe bicycle path towards the U of I campus along Fairview and Goodwin Avenues, as shown in the Urbana Bicycle Master Plan. And the other major item of discussion at Plan Commission was implementation strategy H1, which deals with encouraging Carl to support one-to-one replacement housing should they expand into the neighborhood and remove any housing. Plan Commission discussed this. They talked about the require versus encourage wording. Basically, city staff recommends to keep the wording as it is and to keep the strategy in there. There was some more discussion about whether requirements belong in a guiding document like this or if they belong in development agreements. So overall, I think that was the reason that the Plan Commission ultimately voted to recommend removal of strategy H1 from the plan. Couple options tonight. Council can adopt the plan as presented, can adopt it as with additional changes, or you could deny the adoption of the plan. Recommendations, I'll go over these again real quick. Staff and Plan Commission recommend approval of the adoption of the plan with the following changes. Replace the cover and plan concept map with the pages attached in your memo. Remove Objective 13.4 concerning the additional street lighting. Amend implementation strategy H3 to read encourage investment in existing rental properties, and to amend implementation strategy M12 to read create a safe bike path towards U of I campus along Fairview and Goodwin Avenues as shown in the Urbana Bicycle Master Plan. Plan Commission had a further recommendation to remove strategy H1, and I believe the mayor has some replacement language she would like to recommend. And with that, I will take any questions.
Charlie.
Jeff, just a really minor point here. The sidewalk on North Broadway, only 2 blocks of the 4 blocks are in the city. How do the residents up there realize that, or is that
Yes,
the kind of, is that the kind of thing when that happens, we partner with the county to put in sidewalk, or?
I don't think we would partner with the county on that. We would just work on the city.
Okay. So we'd add 2 more and leave 2 out. Okay, that seems sort of silly.
Yeah, and that's a long-term goal. I don't think it's on the CIP yet.
Okay. As I thought about bicycling stuff, I think it's important to include in the implementation strategy the north-south route of Kohler Avenue that's in the bike master plan. And in fact, I also suggested an alternate or a second north-south path, which is McCullough. Since the bike path goes around McCullough, or there's plan on one, and into the hospital campus along the south garage, I had suggested to folks to look at actually running that across the railroad tracks so that it actually connects to McCullough on the south side of the railroad tracks. And I don't know how we might work something like this, that idea into this plan, but if Carl owns that property across the railroad tracks, it might be feasible to put a pedestrian and bicycle path straight across there and accomplish a much nicer path, because that would actually give you access to downtown.
I do think some of the goals do call for paths through the Carl campus. We just haven't specified where.
Okay. Well, Kohler was the initial one that everybody had discussed. And then finally, could you tell me what the original wording was to strategy H1? I couldn't figure out I see the Plan Commission's wording, but what was the original wording?
That was the original wording.
Was encourage?
Yes, encourage. That was, staff had. In one of our meetings with Carl, we had talked about that, and that was the wording we decided upon.
So it was Carl that requested that change?
We worked together on that, yes.
Right, but there was no public hearing or anything. It was just Carl requesting that word be used?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Robert?
I had a quick question in terms of the Planning Commission made the assertion that this strategy should be another form of document. Why did they draw that conclusion?
Well, basically, this is
These are goals and objectives, right?
Right. Well, it's an implementation strategy, which they thought should be removed because it wasn't really specific, and because this is a neighborhood plan, which is they consider a guiding document. So you can't really put any requirements in a guiding document because it's not an agreement. The agreement is when you get the binding contract.
Can't you say that you're going to negotiate in an implementation plan, that you plan to negotiate? Isn't that an implementation technique?
True, but I think the Plan Commission's point was that we should keep the goal that says the city should seek the one-to-one replacement. But when it comes to actually, when Carl comes in to request to renegotiate the development agreement, to request an expansion of the MIC, that would be the appropriate time at which to negotiate the terms of the one-to-one replacement.
Dennis?
I've got I guess a slightly different kind of question here. We've had a couple neighborhood plans which the neighborhoods felt were comprehensive plans for themselves come before the city. The West Urbana neighborhood has a plan. The Historic East neighborhood has a plan. And when they were brought to the city, they were accepted. And that term has a certain connotation, that they're being accepted as guiding documents, but they didn't have the same Verity, I guess you would call it, as, they weren't, they were amended or they were attached to the overall city plan, but it didn't require an amendment to the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
So this neighborhood document comes to us, and it seems to be a lot weightier. And is that because of the process that the neighborhood went through? And are the results, we're requesting here an amendment to the plan for its inclusion, is that correct?
That's right.
So this is a different kind of a document than previous neighborhood documents?
Well, this one is, I don't know if Libby wants to address this, but this is something produced by the city. I don't know, maybe.
Well, historically, if you remember back, we had a comprehensive plan in '82, and we went through several years of neighborhood plans. Those were all elements of the comprehensive plan. Then in 2005, when we made the new improved comprehensive plan, we actually subsumed all those older bits and pieces, the downtown to campus plan, the King Park plan. Those were all updated and subsumed into the larger document, with the exception of the downtown strategic plan. We kept that as a separate element. All the other ones were superseded. This is our first neighborhood plan since adopting the 2005 comprehensive plan that the city has done pursuant to that comprehensive plan. It's a more detailed, focused view. It's appropriate for it to be an element of the comprehensive plan adopted as an amendment because it gives it, as you said, more gravitas, more of the policy definition. It will help us as we proceed with zoning decisions, which will happen later this year. The HUNA plan was very different. It was a plan that was done entirely by the neighborhood. So it really wasn't a city-sponsored plan, but it was a very impressive plan, and it was appropriate for the city to accept that plan and to take guidance from it, but not as an official city document. Then we have some plans that are supportive of comprehensive planning but don't need to be part of it. I think the bicycle master plan, we made an element that helps us get grants for bicycles, bicycle paths. Greenways plan is an element. So there's just different ways to adopt that. And just going back to the other question on the Planning Commission, I think if you look back through the minutes, the Planning Commission was very supportive of the plan, but you wouldn't know it from the vote. It was a split vote, and I think that's because they had such different views on that one strategy, H1, and whether it should be even in there at all, what it should say, and they had very differing views among the commissioners. So we do feel that there should be a strategy in there that addresses the replacement housing, whatever the language is consistent with the goals, and we felt it was important. We don't usually like to have a separate recommendation from the Plan Commission, but it wasn't like an overwhelming recommendation by the Plan Commission either. So.
Heather?
On here, H1 says, encourage Carl Hospital to support one-to-one replacement housing at locations such as Crystal View Townhomes, Kerr Avenue, and at other various locations, partnering with local housing providers if residents are removed due to Carl expansion. I would like to see require Carl Hospital to collaborate with the city to support replacement housing, and to strike encourage and have require Carl Hospital to, and strike support one-to-one, but to collaborate with the city to support replacement housing. That's what I'd like to see.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Second that.
Charlie?
Yeah, I have a question on that for Ron, which is along the lines, getting back to the issue of this being a comprehensive plan. What elements would you put in it that would be sort of binding as opposed to being guidance? Okay, so binding versus providing guidance. And so I wonder if, and I heard the word negotiate earlier, if the word negotiate would be better put into Heather's version of this or the mayor's version of H12, instead of the word required.
I'm not sure if I got you.
Okay, why would we, the issue that Carl raised earlier was using the word required in the comprehensive plan, as opposed to, they wanted the word encouraged. We've heard the word negotiate. The issue is whether you would put something so strong as the word required in a document that is to provide guidance, as opposed to provide a binding contractual agreement.
May I interrupt there, please? I think there's a misunderstanding here that we are going to require Carl to do all this. That was never intended, and I also don't think it was appropriate for Carl to substitute a word like encourage without having the neighborhood be consulted. All this is saying is that we are going to negotiate with all the parties concerned to figure out a way to do this. It's not requiring Carl to do it. It's just requiring that we have a negotiation and that they participate, which they already promised to do. They never said they're going to do the whole thing. They said they would support it. Libby?
I wanted to try to answer Charlie's question. The plan document in itself is not a regulation, but we do need to think about consistency, and as we look ahead this year, we will have a zoning request, so you want to make sure that you're kind of paving the pathway, because a zoning amendment should be consistent with the comprehensive plan, which is what this is. So I think there's quite a bit of latitude, but if you don't address that, then you're on weaker footing, as you go down. But surely the requirement is really going to take place at that regulatory point of the agreement and the zoning, and, that's when the details. But we should be clear from a policy standpoint, and I think that's what the discussion is about. The plan should be clear, and I think that it's really up to the city what kind of language it wants to put in these policies to get that clarity.
I would tend to concur with Ms. Tyler. These plans, through the year and a half and some odd months that I've been here, I've heard a lot of reference to these comprehensive plans. They are taken very seriously, and not only the public, but as well as internal staff reference them. I think, it's not necessarily a legal issue, but you need to put language in there that's going to reflect whatever weight you intend to give to this comprehensive plan. I don't think you're required to put words like required in. I think you can, as long as the language in there taken as a whole will reflect what you all want to accomplish. If you want to negotiate with Carl, which is my understanding of what we're going to do, you probably should use that word. If you are going to require Carl to do something, then you should use that word.
Okay. Well, and Heather, as you answer, Heather, if I could add, maybe what we want to do is take your language and work on it this week and bring it to committee next Monday. And I hate trying to finalize the language right here. If we don't like exactly what the mayor has proposed in paper here, we should take it to committee and work on it.
Is that a motion? Oh. Do you want to defer it?
I can, do you want me to just? Yeah. Can I substitute my motion? I'll withdraw my motion
And move to send it to
and
committee.
move to send this to the committee of the whole next Monday. I think this is I know it seems maybe minor to some people, but words and the way they're written, I think, can become a bigger issue than we want it to be. And I think that asking us to make a decision like this that could eventually hold a lot of weight is something that I don't think any of us are, quite frankly, prepared to do tonight.
I'd second your motion if I could speak to that. I would like
Charlie?
to see what you just stated. I didn't write it down. If you could email it to us, or if the clerk could get it to us. And I'd like to look at what the mayor has written and see if we can come, because I like some of what the mayor says, particularly the stuff about energy efficiency and and she has the word negotiate agreement with Carl here. So I think I think we're very close, but I'd like to look at some combination of the two here, if possible.
Charlie, would you like me to add LED lighting?
Well, that's something we could look at too. Yeah. I'd also like to look at the bicycle stuff one more time too. So I'd welcome to have this go to committee.
Okay, there's a motion to send this to committee next week.
I seconded it.
Any other, and it's been seconded.
Seconded by
Yeah. Any other discussion? Brandon?
Yeah, I guess before we leave the topic altogether for the night, two brief things. One is that I agree with the mayor. The way you described it there at the end made a lot of sense. Obviously, we're not going to require that Carl solely on their own pay for or build one-to-one replacement housing, but the goal of providing one-to-one replacement housing, I think, is a good goal that fits the neighborhood and the city's goals. And the implementation strategy, I do like the word negotiate, because that's what the next step is, that all of us will sit down together at the table as we figure out what the changes to the MIC Carl's asking for are, and talk about how we can accomplish the big ultimate goal of providing one-to-one replacement, how we can replace the homes. And part of that burden will fall to us and to Carl and to everyone involved. So I support that, and the way the mayor described it is good. I wanted to ask a question before we leave the topic for the evening about the Neighborhood Improvement Fund. And maybe Jeff or Libby, you could comment on this. The Neighborhood Improvement Fund was a big piece of the prior like 1995 agreements, and something that was mentioned as one of the implementation pieces in the plan, but I actually haven't been around long enough to know how that went, how many years the fund was paid into, and what were the community benefits that ultimately derived from that being one of the implementation strategies last time around.
I'll take a stab, and I think, Robert, you probably remember this as well, because Robert was on the CD Commission. Gosh, I think we still have a little bit left, so it's taken about 10 years, and it has been very beneficial to the neighborhood. We've used it, I believe, on some housing rehab projects. We've used it to help us with the neighborhood cleanup, especially when our CDBG funds got tighter. We used it for some neighborhood organization grants. I think we had some bricks and mortar type uses, possibly some sidewalk and some cleanup types of things, site cleanup. Do you remember other projects, Robert?
Basically, those were the essence of what we had kind of achieved, and it was just to improve the various neighborhoods and smaller projects that the city couldn't handle at the time. And I think it's been beneficial overall to have that kind of fund. And if it grew into a larger, it took a while, a long time, but on the other hand, it gave some extra money along the way to help.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that's a good strategy to keep in. The other one that was sort of a big decision point was the issue of the community center. Yeah. And I just wonder, before we all see this again, or maybe it won't happen before we see this document again, but what can the next steps for the conversation be? It's been a conversation so much. I don't know if you, Robert or Libby, because you've been involved with the community center idea for a long time, have some ideas about what is the city's role in making the next conversation happen so that some conclusion comes from it.
Well, I'll comment and give you some history. The community center was asked by Ward 3 for many, many years. At one point, we were trying to put together a package of a group of developers looking at land. At one point, we had identified some. It faded out. We had monies put aside through community development to put into a kitty to help do that. The last council, they had a meeting just prior to the implementation of the street improvements on Goodwin Avenue. And there was a discussion that council night. I was not present, but I heard about it. And they brought a number of the committee I don't even think it was a valid committee that came from the community to come, and they asked for what they wanted, and they really couldn't decide. And at that time, they were looking at a combination between the school and the city. And my understanding was the door was open, but they still wanted an isolated unit, and they said no to it, and I guess at that point in time, the money walked off the table. So we're back in the process of trying to redevelop that fund so that they can do that in some form. There was a construction company on Goodwin Avenue they were looking at. It's now moved, which is a very large site in conjunction with King Park. That could be a very nice facility put there, but it's going to take some time and money to develop. And I think through the TIF, that's a possibility. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's a possibility. If it's in conjunction with the school, because if the school, I can't remember the boundaries now. It's been so long, but I think if the boundaries were just right, we could do that in conjunction with the school, something like that.
There are different visions of the community center, and that's maybe caused some delay when grant funds have been available one time through CDBG and then the significant state monies. Maybe the center was trying to do too much, but there is a need for a multi-purpose room at King's School, and that is something that TIF could fund. We do, if you look in that King Park TIF plan, it talks about improvements to both the school and the park. So that's something, but trying to make a multi-purpose room in a school also function as a community center was a problem, because there were different visions about hours of use and supervision, and it's not always compatible, but it's so hard to build something that doesn't have multi-uses in it. Maybe the best thing to do is, again, you know, keep thinking with TIF, possibly down the road, CDBG will become more available. So it's still out there. I think there's still a need and an interest, but it might actually wind up being two things. One would be a room that the students can use at King's School, and the separate might be a separate true community center that might be more of a grassroots kind of effort.
Thanks. Okay, anyone else? We have a motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we'll take this wording up at the Committee of the Whole next week. Next, an ordinance requiring the subordination of lien on Alan Strong property, 395 North Ray Street.
Mayor, this is
It's Ron O'Neill.
This is just dovetailing what Mr. Carino has already brought to your attention regarding the redevelopment of 395 North Ray Street. As we mentioned a few weeks ago, Mr. Strong is attempting to obtain some financing to continue doing some prep work on the site, including the demolition of the current structure that's there. As a condition for obtaining that financing, the financial institution is requiring subordination of our $50,000 lien on that property. So it's incumbent upon this body to determine whether or not that they are willing to do that or not. What that would essentially mean is that, you know, if everything goes south, that financial institution gets paid first before the city would get its $50,000 back. So they're kind of separate issues, but related. And, you know, one of the reasons that it was important for us to wait is because if you were not going to grant the extension of time, then obviously the return of that, the paying back of this $50,000 becomes more important. And so it seems that you have to make that determination that you were going to grant the extension first, and then you can consider reasonably whether or not you're going to want to subordinate your lien.
I have a question.
Mr. Roberts.
Well, so far we sounded like we were supporting Alan Strong's development at the extension of the agreement. Now, if it sounded like it was possible that if the proposed use of that property changed, there might be another kind of development suggested for the property. So that kind of a change in direction would not necessarily affect this request currently. In other words, it wouldn't. When you said that if the project went south, i.e., if it failed in some manner, the city would lose. Well, it would be second at the table.
Right.
But what would happen if the property, like a completely different proposal was brought forward for the use of that property? Would that require, if it required a new negotiation or a new development agreement, would our money be in jeopardy at that time?
Well, I have to separate out these issues. This lien that we have is for a redevelopment based upon a redevelopment agreement that we have.
All right.
So right now, yeah, that the one that exists. So we're owed that money,
okay,
unless and until this project on which it was based comes to fruition. Let's assume that it doesn't, and that some other project Mr. Strong proposes does come to fruition. Well, that would involve the negotiation of another redevelopment agreement, and we could be going down a whole nother road. But there's still the issue of that $50,000.
Okay.
In my estimation, if there is another project, part of that redevelopment agreement would have to address this $50K. However, if you subordinate your lien, the city's lien on this property, it really doesn't matter what project is done. This financing that he is getting from this institution, if, Mr. Strong's business interests all become insolvent and this financial institution seeks to go after, to foreclose on this property to get its money back, we are second in line. Doesn't mean that we will get it, doesn't mean that we won't. It would depend on what that property is sold for and if there's going to be any deficiency judgments against Mr. Strong. There's all kinds of variables that would have to be considered. But just know that whatever happens, if you do this, that bank gets paid, and then if there's any left, then we get paid.
David?
I move approval. I think the idea is that this will help him with the negotiation to get some additional funding in a way that may actually cause this to move forward in a way that it hasn't yet. I think that the benefits are pretty clear on this, so I would move approval.
Second?
Motion by Gehrig, second by Stevenson. Any other discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Barnes?
Yes?
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes?
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe? Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Next, an appointment to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. I am recommending Brian Blake, who is a teacher at the King School, and he's been a bicyclist for quite a while.
Second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Barnes. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. There being no further business, this meeting is